Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am so pleased to welcome back retired Major General Randy Manner to our airwaves. Randy, how have you been?
I've been good. It's a pleasant opportunity to celebrate the nation's birthday locally, and I don't mean in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
But, all
well,
good.
you know, they need you on all those cable networks, so they have to keep flying you around so that you can join them, because you are somebody who has the experience and has the knowledge and has the ability to speak about it all so very clearly. One of the things that I want to start with today is an issue that has been ongoing, and that is the increasing effort to make our Army political and not independent. Retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling was the commanding general of the U.S. Army in Europe, was on MS Now today, and he talked about Hegseth's firing of Army General Christopher Donahue, you know, the guy who was described as the soldier's soldier, the guy who did everything right, the guy who people envisioned one day being head of the Joint Chiefs. I want to play what Mark Hertling had to say about this.
It's interesting to me, though, what General Brown said about the politicalization of various positions. That's what we have. If Secretary Hegseth or President Trump were able to say, hey, I'm asking General Donahue or General Brown or any of the other 24 or more very senior officers to retire, and here's why I'm doing that, and gave a very good reason, as opposed to being woke or tied to General Milley or tied to a DEI initiative, then you would say, okay, I understand that. But what we're seeing is the dispatch of general officers, 3 and 4 stars, as well as not only the staff judge advocates, but the inspector generals, so that they can have their way in terms of the force. It is scary to me as a former general officer and commander of forces of what's going on, because it's not only affecting these couple of dozen individuals, it's also having just a cooling effect on the rest of the force, from lieutenants all the way up to colonels and generals. They're saying to themselves, am I going to be able to continue a professional career in an Army that I love because I'm political or because I'm merit-based? And that's a question that a lot of soldiers are asking themselves right now.
It would seem to me, not that we're expecting to get any truthful numbers from this administration, that if we looked at the number of people joining the military now as opposed to, say, 5 years ago, my guess is that those numbers would be decreased. I mean, I can't imagine being a woman and thinking to myself today, yeah, the military, that's a good career for me, or somebody who is black or brown thinking that that's a good career for me. What do you see with this issue of the politicization of the military?
It's a very, very dangerous action that the President and the Secretary of Defense are taking. And I'll lead with a direct comment. I've said before that the Secretary of Defense is a clear and present danger to the national security of the United States, but I'm going to expand that to include the President himself, because he is authorizing all of these changes. The purging of our most competent generals for no reason other than they apparently treat others with dignity and respect, that they in some way, they literally have incredible experience, but they are being fired because, quite frankly, they're women, they're minorities, or they're associated with leaders that have spoken up against the Secretary of Defense. I'm talking about in private, please, in private, spoken up against the Secretary of Defense or the President. It is every military officer's obligation to speak up, to uphold the Constitution, and not in the way of some far-right cultists, which means uphold it for white males, but to uphold it for all Americans, regardless of their color, creed, orientation, whatever to treat everyone with dignity and respect. This is extremely dangerous. It's happening as we speak, and it's getting worse every day. The fact that we have 2 4-stars, Admiral McRaven, who is one of the most decorated combat veterans that we have, and General Brown, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who Trump actually brought in, they both have come out vividly and in writing and said this is dangerous and we are headed the wrong way, and it will actually be a serious flaw in our nation's security and for our nation now, and just being amplified in the days, weeks, and months ahead.
If the president doesn't rein in Pete Hegseth, is there any other body or person who could rein in Pete Hegseth?
Congress has incredible powers to be able to withhold funding from the Defense Department to get what it wants. The challenge is right now, the entire government is controlled by the Republicans, which means controlled by the president, meaning whether it's Congress, the Supreme Court, or of course, the president himself. So there are no checks and balances at all whatsoever. There is a flagrant, it's also fragrant, but a flagrant disregard for the rule of law by this administration that basically does what it wants until it is somehow challenged in court by various authorities, and then only begrudgingly backs off and threatens judges and threatens people as being un-American or woke or whatever. In other words, it's exactly the way that the Nazi Party engaged from 1923 to 1933 when they actually took over power. They intimidate others that don't agree with them.
It seems that sometimes Pete Hegseth is doing exactly what Donald Trump wants, but it also, there's been reporting just in the last week that one plan, Hegseth was going to make a speech to NATO and was going to announce these huge troop withdrawals from Europe. And the White House stopped it. So makes it sound like this was an idea Hegseth got on his own. I mean, if the White House stepped in and said, no, that's not a speech you're giving. And I believe he had already pulled some troops from Poland that were then replaced with different troops. It was almost like he was chastised, shall we say. Is your sense that he's just a loose cannon, or is your sense that he is doing exactly what the administration wants?
It is my blunt opinion that he is doing exactly what the president wants. The challenge is that other people in the government around the president are saying, what the hell? Pull that guy back in from doing that. It's not the president. I'm very concerned about his mental capabilities at this time, his ranting and raving. I couldn't believe it. After July 4th, his record number of rants on his text messaging for hours. And some of them are, I mean, it's astounding. It's just astounding. So we have a president who apparently is suffering from mental condition. And so it's not the president reining him in. It's people around the president who occasionally are saying, do this, don't do that. The Secretary of Defense is 100% loyal to the president.
Oh, God, yes. You may have seen the interview that Governor Pritzker did with Caitlin Collins on CNN, where he flat out says, I think the president has dementia. And he said, I'm not a medical person. I can't, give you a diagnosis. But he said, look at any of the interviews or speeches he gave in his first term, and then look at what he looks like and sounds like today. He said it's clear that this is a guy who is very impaired. But what terrifies me is he's got a sycophant cabinet. He's surrounded by people who apparently only tell him positive things, who, if he does go off the rails, who's going to stop him? Who's going to rein him in? There were rumors that he started talking about using nukes in Iran, and the military shut that talk down right away. Is that what we're up to? The military going to be what reins him in if he really goes nuts?
the military only has limited capability to say no, and that would include on the issue of nuclear weapons uh, to the president. But when I say has the ability, that means also the people who resist could be fired or worse. So uh, that is important for me to say that. All the other things the president does, like using National Guardsmen to guard the reflecting pool, that's a total misuse of military assets, as well as, of course, having guardsmen patrolling the streets of Washington, D.C. That is legal, but absolutely improper use of military assets. So I say again that right now there is no one that can stop this president. The only thing that can stop him is going to be winning both seats of Congress. And if you can only win the House will do their own investigations nonstop and withhold funding, which, by the way, even one of the houses, meaning the House of Representatives, um, that could be sufficient to slow down this train wreck, which is going off the rails unbelievably. I have to tell a brief story. There's a county that I own another home in, and the sad news is that that county, very rural county in Virginia, it's suffering from as much as 25% fewer sales among their stores because of the various policies of the president compared to 1 year ago. Meaning, it's impacting it's the president's policies are actually impacting the poorest and his own supporters far more than it is other people. And it's very sad to see the suffering that is occurring in terms of lowered amount of food available through food banks, a less amount of health care because many of the people are leaving, the health professionals are leaving the rural towns. The services, the tax bases are decreasing because people have fewer money. Um, it's extremely sad, and that's I mean it's all verifiable, and it's just it pains me. But on the other side, all of those people in those counties, they voted for him, and they're getting what they voted for.
When you are shopping or walking around that town, do you hear anybody expressing any regret that they supported Trump? Because I know in some places people are like, oh my God, I didn't vote for this. I would never have voted for this. I'm so sorry I voted for this. And other people seem to be drinking the Kool-Aid that, Trump is still going to save us.
So I personally do not engage with anybody I do not know on political issues because there's no value to that. So I don't overhear it or pay attention to it. And it's something where that's their right to vote as they wanted. And I'm not going to attack any individual for expressing their desire. It is, however, something where someone has to own their vote. They have to own the way that they wanted the government to go. But personally, no, I have not engaged people to learn of their remorse or their happiness with what is going on.
I'm talking to retired former Major General Randy Manner. When we come back, Randy, I'd like to talk to you about Air Force Major Jason Watson and his recent protest on the Capitol steps. We'll be right back after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
On July 1st, Air Force Major Jason Watson, a 20-year active duty veteran, put on his uniform and went to the Capitol steps where he held a sign that said, "Impeach, convict, remove." Unsurprisingly, he was arrested, though there is a defense fund that as of this morning had raised about $140,000 for his defense. I know that sort of thing isn't allowed, right? I mean, that we don't let our military do that. Is that correct?
That's correct. If you are in the military, whether you are in the active Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or the Space Force, or if you are in the National Guard or reserve as a part-time drilling member, you are prohibited by the Uniform Code of Military Justice from publicly speaking up on any political matters, whether it is protesting a political situation or the reverse, supporting a political situation. You are able to have conversations with your friends, not necessarily on Facebook that would be discoverable. And you're also able to contribute money privately to various parties to reflect. And of course, you're absolutely encouraged to vote. However, our military has been based on the idea that we are apolitical. And therefore, while we are on active duty, in any of those capacities, we are prohibited, and that is the way that it should be. So this young major felt that he had had enough. He was going to, he did this from an informed perspective. He held a press conference in advance, and then he walked up the Capitol steps and held up the protest sign in uniform. All those things are not appropriate. He will likely face punishment under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's important for your listeners to understand that he was arrested on the steps of the Capitol, not because of him being in uniform and doing what he said, but because he was in an area that was restricted to only appear with a congressman for whatever the purpose that you were there for. So he was actually trespassing in a secure area, not allowed. So the Capitol
So wait a minute, he
Police,
was arrested for the trespassing and not for the protest?
that's correct. Well, wait a minute. You mixed words there. By him being up there and protesting by himself in an area that he was not allowed to be, that was trespassing. So the Capitol Police are who arrested him. The idea that the military is going to prosecute him, or excuse me, likely to prosecute him separately. There's two separate issues here. However, they're related.
Okay. But I think his argument was that he took an oath to defend this country against not only foreign bad actors, but also he took an oath to defend this country against domestic folks who would want to disrupt and overturn our government. And isn't there some justification for him following his oath by doing what he did?
So in the same way that I'm speaking out now, the same way that General Brown is speaking up, the same way that General Hertling is speaking out, the same way that Admiral McRaven are speaking up, we are retired officers and NCOs and so on. We are permitted the same way that Senator Kelly has proven as a retired Navy captain. We are absolutely able to speak up as a retired officer. But while you are on active duty, you cannot do that. Or if you do, you will bear the consequences. And the reason is we cannot have our military actively saying, A, we support the president and he's our hero. And we also cannot have anybody saying he's a dirtbag and we need to have him impeached. We have to keep our active military apolitical, which means they are aligned with the Constitution, not with any political leaders.
So is it the fact that he did this publicly? If he had done this privately, if he'd been sitting in a restaurant with other folks and said these things, would it have been different?
Okay, so first of all, if he was, of course, we start getting into gray areas. The good or bad about the situation as it unfolded, it was quite frankly black and white. He was in an area that he was not supposed to be without a congressman, and therefore he was trespassing on the Capitol steps in that particular part. That's one infraction, a federal infraction. The second one is under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. When he's released back to the military, as I mentioned, they will prosecute him. If he is in a restaurant having a conversation with like-minded friends, saying, I think, and by the way, not in uniform, that's important, and just saying, I don't agree with this. I think we're going the wrong way. Then, quite frankly, that would be okay. That would be okay because he's not doing it publicly. He's not raising his voice. He's not yelling it in the restaurant. He's having a private conversation, not in uniform. If he was in uniform with a sign in front of his home, he wouldn't be arrested for protesting, but you can imagine if there were pictures and images or he had a press conference on his front yard, then it's very likely the military would prosecute him under the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice.
What kind of, since with all the rules that you've laid out, this is a pretty clear-cut case of violating the rules he was supposed to be following. I mean, what kind of a punishment do you think he'll get? I mean, is this like life in prison?
No, it's not. It's very likely that he will, correction, it's going to be up to the military court. However, without referring to it specifically, it could mean that he could be reduced in rank. He could receive a fine, a monetary fine, or he could receive some short-term, perhaps weeks or months of imprisonment, or he could be removed from the service in perhaps even under less than honorable conditions. So I'm not saying that all of those or any of those could happen, but they could happen.
So he could be basically given a dishonorable discharge?
It's possible.
We've talked about your fear and my fear that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump will simply get rid of anybody who might oppose them in any way, shape, or form. When we come back from a break, Randy, I want to ask you if that's the case also with the JAG officers. I mean, does this particular gentleman have to fear that they will just throw the book at him because they want to please Donald Trump? I'm talking to retired Major General Randy Manner. We're talking about the situation with Jason Watson. We'll be right back after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
I'm speaking with retired Major General Randy Manner. We are talking about the case of a young Air Force Major, Jason Watson, who put on his uniform and held up a sign that said impeach, convict, remove. He was taken into custody. He will face military justice for violating the rules he was supposed to obey, especially in his uniform. My wonder is, we've seen what Pete Hegseth has done to the military brass, getting rid of people who are, whoever talked to Milley, getting rid of people who are women or blacks. And you have always told me that your fear was that they would just keep firing people until they found somebody who would say yes. Will this major get a fair trial, or will the people prosecuting this be more concerned about what Donald Trump thinks than what is fair and just?
It's difficult to say, because recall that the president himself actually pardoned convicted war criminals from the United States military. And now they're heroes because in his eyes. However, committing war crimes by any military member that was prosecuted and found guilty before by the military, they should keep that punishment. But the president disagreed, just like, of course, he told FIFA to put the American back on the soccer team against Belgium, because again, he's unhinged and he's doing what others are telling him to do. In this particular case, I hope that the major will receive fair treatment. It is likely that he will. However, the Secretary of Defense could override the findings of the military justice system, and that would be something that will yet to play out. So I do not want to sit here and predict what the Secretary of Defense will do. Under normal conditions, there should always be the expectation of a somewhat fair trial, whether it's in civilian society or in the military. Notice what I said, somewhat fair. I find that the military justice system while it absolutely has made mistakes over the years, particularly when it came to the prosecution of males on sexual intimidation or sexual abuse of women, where there were irregularities and there were mistakes made. In general terms, the military does treat its members fairly well in their court system. So I'm hoping for the best, but the Secretary of Defense could actually override it, and that would be the another telling moment.
What is the obsession with General Milley? And, at the top upper reaches of the military, doesn't everybody kind of talk to everybody else? I mean, don't they all go to meetings together? I mean, this idea that like anybody who ever had any contact with Milley must be purged, I don't understand that.
Well, I'm not sure if it's quite that bad. I hope that anybody's ever talked with him, because he was uh, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and so he did talk to lots of people. I do think that uh, some of his executive officers, meaning his senior military officers who help prepare meetings for him and so on, they have been denied promotions or removed because of their association with General Milley. It is also true, as you know, that the president himself directed the Secretary of Defense to remove the protection from General Milley as a retired senior officer who obviously made some very difficult calls on the world relative to military operations. And so therefore that normal security afforded him was removed by the president because he hates him. The secretary, excuse me, the General Milley, I know him fairly well. We worked together in the Pentagon many years ago. He is a incredibly educated, extremely sharp uh, soldier, smart leader. He's a great American who does the right thing for the United States. And essentially, like when he apologized for appearing in uniform with the president because he did not know that the president was going to clear the protesters out of the park near the White House. He did not know that. And therefore, he apologized and said, I should never have been there, and that was inappropriate. But the president wanted his top military guy to be there. That embarrassed the president. There's been many other cases, apparently, where General Milley has stood up to the president until he fired him, where he was standing up for what is right under the law in the proper use of the military, yet, and so therefore, the president hates anybody who stands up to him. And it's evidence over and over and over again, whether it's politicians or women, even quite frankly, his own party members who he goes after and embarrasses and calls them names. He truly is a narcissist, and it's a very difficult situation for them.
You and I have talked before about the importance of holding military honors sacred. I'm sure you have heard that Donald Trump is talking about giving his sons some kind of medal of honor, and that maybe they could turn around and give him one as well. Like the whole family wants a medal of honor. First of all, the Medal of Honor. What do you do to earn the Medal of Honor?
Well, first of all, you don't earn it. It is awarded to you for gallantry above and beyond where your own life is in danger and you have saved numerous lives of others in the process. It is the highest honor of the United States. And MAGA cult members are basically excusing the president by saying he was just joking or kidding. That's crap. The president speaks out loud things he's thinking in his head. And therefore, to even joke about this is disgusting. It is absolutely inappropriate. It probably makes every single soldier every single military member other than the MAGA cult members in the military, it probably makes them think, you just got to be kidding me. This guy is truly full of crap. And this is further evidenced by demeaning, in even in a joking manner, the idea of, oh, I'm going to give it to my sons for their hunting and from me because of Russia, Russia, Russia. This is these are examples that the average American should see as somebody who is not clear in his thinking and in his head. There's something wrong with this president, more than any other president that I have ever seen in my lifetime. No president has said words like this times 1,000, quite frankly.
Yeah. Can he do that? Can he say that he's giving his sons the Medal of Honor? As the president, is the president the only person who decides who gets the Medal of Honor?
So the sad news is that the president is the approving authority for the Medal of Honor. So I hope he would never go there. It was kind of funny. He said, I'm going to give the Congressional Medal of Honor as well. He has no authority to do that. The only authority that he has directly to do is to do by the way, it has to come up through the military chain through the Secretary of Defense. But remember, we already said the Secretary of Defense is nothing more than a yes man for the president. And also the fact that they were never in the military, extremely unlikely that would ever happen. The president does have the authority to give the Presidential Medal of Freedom himself. He can give to whoever he wants. And he's already proven by awarding it to people who, under any circumstances, would not in any way be eligible or even considered for such a distinguished award. So there's three, and by the way, he has no authority under congressional medals whatsoever, zero. But then again, we have two houses of Congress that are beholden to him, and they're prisoners of thought to the president. So what can you say?
If we took over one or both houses after the midterms, could anybody do anything to stop this?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. That's why, again, you've got to call your congressman, as I've said on your show before, for the standing congressman, no matter what party they are. And again, that number is 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121 for the Capitol operator. Asked to be referred to your two senators and your representative, and your voice will be heard. It's another way, in addition to voting, to speak up. But we have got to get people out to vote. We have to get people out to vote this fall. This is going to be, our nation's future is at stake this November through January. We must resist and get this nation back on course to treat all Americans, no matter what their background, with dignity and respect, to help the poorest Americans, to ensure that we have good, reliable community policing, and we get the military out of our cities.
Yeah. We're going to take a break, but I want to talk to you about that, about the deployment of the National Guard, particularly the fact that apparently the National Guard is defending the reflecting pool. I'm talking to retired Major General Randy Manner. We're going to be back with more after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
I'm speaking with retired Army Major General Randy Manner, who used to be one of the people who was in charge of the National Guard. The National Guard, which has apparently been sent to guard the reflecting pool, lest anyone want to pick up those blue pieces that are apparently floating all around after they've come off the bottom of the reflecting pool. A fence, Randy, wasn't enough. We had to put a fence and the military around it. This seems to me like the single most absurd deployment of the National Guard I have ever heard of.
Yes, it absolutely is. It's an embarrassment to those young men and women that are there in uniform. They're the best of America, and here they are, quite frankly, protecting Trump's folly. And it's the fact that they're even there is an amplification of the embarrassment the president is feeling about the situation. I was very fortunate to be one of 12, approximately 12 retired generals and admirals that wrote a letter to Governor Pritzker last week that thanked him for his refusal to send his own National Guard to the nation's capital as part of the 250th celebration. There are two events that were going on in Washington that required the National Guard. Well, one required the National Guard, the second one did not. The second one is the one that's been ongoing for almost a year, which is Trump's another folly or embarrassment and misuse of almost $250 million in deploying thousands of military on the streets of Washington for no reason when it should be investing money in local policemen and in community engagement programs. At, Governor Pritzker, in the call by the National Guard Bureau to get people to go to the district for the National Special Security event, normally, under a normal situation, states would respond. The governor in Illinois refused, which was exactly the right call, because in fact, many of those northern states that thought that they would support the president in the normal security requirements for a very large event as backup to the police, guess what? It's turning out that evidence is coming out that those soldiers and airmen were in fact patrolling other parts of the city beyond the local area around where the festivities were allegedly going to be held. So again, your listeners have to understand there were two missions. One was legitimate, providing backup to local police, and backup means, for example, they could help direct traffic outside of the major part of the city. They could be as a security force sitting, no joke, sitting in the DC Armory, which has a DC guardsman at one point in my career. It's a huge armory located just outside. It's in the district, but it's right on the edge of the district, sitting there and practicing crowd control as a backup if the local police became overwhelmed. Or they could be providing communications backup in the various command and control centers so the police could put the maximum number of people on the street. That is what's supposed to happen. That's not what happened with this. And your governor, or excuse me, the governor that was in Illinois, he did the right thing. And so we wanted to also reinforce that by writing that letter to compliment him on his decision.
Andy sent me the letter while you were talking. The undersigned are 19 retired senior defense and military leaders who served under presidents of both parties. Based upon our roles promoting the strength of the military and protecting U.S. national security, we are concerned that several states have previously objected to the administration's domestic National Guard operations, have recently deployed troops to Washington, D.C. We applaud your prudence in keeping the Illinois National Guard out of our capital at this time. And a very impressive and very long list of folks who signed on to this letter. Did you get a response of any kind from the governor's office? I realize that you just sent this a few days ago.
Well, I did an interview with another media on Friday, the day after that it came out, and I have talked to somebody from the governor's staff since that time. I've not heard from the governor, but not that I would expect to, of course. But I'm just very proud of him. And by the way, a handful of other governors who did the same thing, and we sent a letter to them as well.
Well, you know, that's a really great thing, because as I've learned, people are more likely to communicate things that they don't like, or things that went wrong, or things that they think need to be changed, rather than ever calling up. And I've encouraged people with elected officials, you know, if they've voted on to support a bill that you think is good, you can also call them up to say, I am so pleased that my representative voted to support X, Y, or Z. That's really important too.
Oh, in fact, thank you for saying that, Joan. It's quite frankly, positive reinforcement is always much better. And so when your elected officials, whether it's your local community, your councilman, your school board, your mayor, or your elected official above that, if they do something good, then you should send them an email or send them a note. And kindness goes a long way. And because all they typically hear, 98% of it's going to
Yeah,
be
really.
negative. So yeah, so let's help out our elected officials that are truly trying to do the right thing for everyone. Remember, if you do the right thing for everyone, you're going to have some people that are happy and some people that are not. But as long as you're treating people in an equal way, then that's the way that our American value system, it reflects our American values. We treat people with dignity and respect, and we do the best we can for everyone, knowing we cannot do everything for everybody.
Yeah. I sent you an article. University of Chicago professor, security expert Robert Pape wrote. He writes essays all the time. He has a couple different Substacks actually, and he wrote about the fact that people like me should understand that the conflict in Iran is about much more than military. And he said, don't think that because there's perhaps no bombing right now, or because people are sitting at a table right now, that means that this conflict is over. First of all, we've seen that, comes, it goes, it comes, it goes. But he also said that, whether you use the military or not, the goal is political influence and power, that the military might
Yes,
be one
correct.
means to that. Is that true, do you think?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Political power or influence, which means diplomatic power and influence, economic power. Yes, the military should only be used to help prevent war, or if somebody is not acting in the national interest. Notice what I said: national interest, not in Trump's interest, but in the national interest of the United States. Then you use the military as a last resort. You rely on diplomatic power and economic power first. So that is absolutely, I do agree with the premise that was communicated.
With everything going on, are you worried about the midterms? I mean, I've got some listeners who really are terrified that if Donald Trump feels that he hasn't done enough to sway elections to his political party, that he will go crazy, deploy ICE, try to deploy the military. Are you concerned about the midterms? What do you see coming up in, what is it? How many days? Like 100 and, I can count. I think it's 120 days at this point.
So I am extremely concerned. That's why I am on every form of media that I can be. That's why I am, uh, uh, should we say, invigorating many of my fellow retired comrades in arms. I am speaking out. I participate in many organizations where we are trying to work through the potential. I'm doing it from a military point of view, of course, but they're looking at it from a legal point of view of how fast can we move, and having lawsuits ready to go if the president deploys ICE or deploys um, the military to polling places in any state, to include if a southern governor does it in a blue city, quote unquote, to help secure the voting process. You can see already there's been a win where even the Supreme Court said, Louisiana, you must count the votes that arrived after Election Day or within some period. It is being contested right now, where the president has attempted to say, if you don't give us your voter rolls, blue states, we will not. The Postal Service will not deliver any of the ballots to your state. I mean, it's just complete and total fascism that is rolling through this administration. And by the way, for those of you, the listeners who don't know what fascism means, please go look it up. Look it up. And I mean, like Webster's online, look it up, because that is what is happening right now in our government. And we have to stop it. And we've got to speak up now. We have to stand united, as Ben Franklin said, so that we will, if we don't stand together, we will certainly hang, separately. Or no, if
Mm-hmm.
we don't hang together, we will hang separately. And that is exactly what is going to happen. So we must stand up for the United States. We must stand up for our state. We must stand up for our community more than ever in our lifetime, right now.
What can we do as regular folks? How do we push back against this if something bad happens?
Okay, wait, you said two different things there. The first thing is we have to do things now between now and election day. Okay, which means we have to actively participate in supporting those candidates that are like-minded. We have to volunteer to do call centers, or you can do them remotely, of course. We have to volunteer to do door to door. We have to be able to contribute money to your cause as you can or you feel appropriate to do so. You need to do things locally to support, again, those people that you believe will be who will resist this direction toward tyranny. We also, by the way, you need to start now calling that number I gave earlier to be able to express the good and also the bad based on whatever it is that your particular legislator is doing. So those are some of the things that I would encourage people to do. Volunteer to work at the polls. Become more active. Get people out to vote. Help drive an elderly person or somebody who can't get to the poll to vote early if your local area permits it. Those are a handful of things that people can do at the local level.
Apparently, as of this morning, 18 states have complied with Trump's demand to send over voter information. I'm assuming that the rest of the states are not going to comply. 18 states. Is that enough, do you think, to give him the election if he does something underhanded with that information?
Well, as you can probably imagine, it matters what states they are, because if they're the states where the senators are close to flipping from Republican to Democrat, or where like Florida is probably one of the states. I haven't seen the list, but if Florida switches, well, correction, I'm sorry, that's a bad example, because Florida probably is providing the information. So allegedly, I mean, you can imagine, we can think of nefarious ways that they could see where these votes are coming from and then not deliver the ones they don't want to deliver. I am not going to hopefully go there, but that's possible. It is something where if Pennsylvania refuses well, that's a bad example too. I think it's really about where are the Senate races and the House races in being contested. The reality is there's probably no more than 20 races across the country that are going to matter. So you'd have to align the states up with those 20 votes, 20 positions, and then figure it out from there.
Randy, thank you so much for spending time with us. It is always a pleasure. Do you have any? Are you going to be on any cable news outlets in the near future that we can keep an eye on?
Well, I'm sure, but I can't predict because it's all about how do things go. But typically, it's anywhere between 5 to 15 times a week. But whether it's on podcasts or national or on radio or whatever. But again, I appreciate very much what you and others are doing there at WCPT to be able to provide a voice to people, a voice of reason, and one that is hopefully backed up by law and respect for the law, and of course the idea of standing up for American values and for providing the idea of equity for all Americans.
Well, it's a little easier for us to do it when we talk to people like you. So again, thank you so much for being here. Retired Major General Randy Manner.